Good evening everyone, and welcome to tonight's Executive Committee meeting. My name is Asjad Mahmood. I am the leader of Edinburgh Council and the chairman for this Executive Committee. I think because it's Christmas, I think we'll go from right for the introductions.
I'm Howard Culshaw. I'm the Head of Legal and Democratic Services and the Council's Monitoring Officer.
Jane Watson, Democratic Services Manager.
Damon Lawrenson, Interim Director of Corporate Resources.
Councillor Hanif, Welfare and Relay Ward Councillor, responsible for Penn Leisure Services. Thank you.
Councillor Mohammed Ahmed, Councillor for Marsden Southfield and portfolio holder for Housing, Health and Wellbeing.
David Whip, I'm a councillor for Avian Courts and I'm the portfolio holder for Resources.
Councillor Tom Whip, I'm the councillor for Penalsett Ward, a councillor for Penalsett Ward, and the executive portfolio holder for Planning and Regulatory Services.
Dorothy Lower, councillor for Waterside and Horsfield, and lead on community safety.
Hi, good evening. Philip Spur, Director of Place.
Richard Gibson, Director of Resources.
Rose Rouse, Chief Executive.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is declaration of interest. No. Public question time. I don't have any members of the public. Minutes of the last meeting.
Move them.
Second, I'm Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour? That's brilliant. Next item is performance update report from 1st of April to 30th of September. I'll move this report as set out, and obviously there are certain areas that are improving and need improving, and I think the work is in progress. I've just got one question just on like staff sickness. I know that different factors and affect that side of things, and there's lots of support from, I think Philip mentioned, Richard might have mentioned it, but on the previous meetings, lots of support has been put in place to support our staff. And I think hopefully in the next couple of months we'll see the results. I don't know whether you want to add anything.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It's something that we keep under close monitoring, and it is concerning the last few months in terms of the pattern. And I think what we're going to be doing next is looking at the triggers, because we're already, as the Leader says, providing a number of different elements of support, like the Employee Assistance Programme and other support. But we now need to look at our sickness management and those triggers when people sit down with their line manager and have that conversation. So it is something that is concerning us, and we will be looking at it more closely to look at how we can work to improve it.
Thank you, Rose. Councillor Witt.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to look at some of the areas where the council is judged to be performing well. So we've got the areas around planning, where 12 months ago there was considerable concern that we could have the development management taken away from us, with the planning inspectorate taken on because of the very poor performance at the time. And I'm delighted that the performance in both major and minor planning applications has taken us out of that bracket, and that we're not at risk of the government blackballing us. And then the other ones which I think are worth commenting on are the street cleanliness, both in terms of litter and dog fouling, where again those have got a green tick because of the improvement that there's been. And it's notable that for the last trying to work out how many months it is. Certainly 6, perhaps more than 6 months, that we haven't had the service of district enforcement, which was supposedly the be-all and end-all in terms of keeping our streets and public spaces clean. And quite rightly, they are no longer employed by the borough, and I'm delighted to see that there's been an improvement since they went rather than a deterioration. So I think 2 areas where council staff and council services are doing well, and I think that should be something that we remark upon and say thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, all those in... Sorry, Councillor Nadine Ahmed.
Yeah, just first of all, touching on the point about the performance of planning. Yes, I agree there was real concern at the time regarding the performance of that particular department. And there was various reasons for it, not a particular reason. And I want to thank all the officers for working, particularly Neil and his team, worked extremely hard during a really difficult time. And we put in place at the time some measures. We looked into it, like you're doing now in terms of the staffing, sickness issues, and the same thing happened with the planning department. A plan of action was put into place, and I agree it does take time for the results to come through, and now we are seeing them positive outcomes, which is pleasing. Just touching upon the issue around dog fouling specifically, there is still a huge issue. Our staff are doing an amazing job in challenging circumstances, but there is a big issue still in terms of littering, dog fouling in certain parts of Pendle, so we need to just keep an eye on it.
Okay. Okay. All those in favour of that? Well, next item is the Internal Audit Service. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chairman. The report sets out the issues in terms of internal audit, and I think that the way forward with this is to approve a 1-year extension to the current contract, and by the time we get to 31st of March 2025, we've had a look at how that service might be provided in the future. It could be, we could have a shared service with another authority. We could have a fresh tender process, or indeed we could use the sort of off-the-shelf public service offer that is available. But I think the 12-month extension gives us time to properly assess the best way forward on that, so I would move.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Wick. Yeah, I'll happily second that. And just again thank the Finance Department for all their hard work all year round. Do a fantastic job. Councillor Stone.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I think this is the right decision under the circumstances. Inevitably, with a new internal auditor, it does take a few years for them to come to grips fully with the systems of control, and so there's gains from keeping a little bit of stability through keeping MIA for another year, and particularly when we have changes in senior management. So I think absolutely it's the right decision. I did want to ask one question, because in the paper it refers to the bottom financial implications. It talks about the internal audit budget for 2021-22 and says it's within the budget for that year. I presume it's within the budget for 24-25, or will it be?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, it's typo that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is, yeah. Yeah, there's provision in the budget for next year for that.
Right, thank you.
Okay. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Next item is number 6, AB Flood Alleviation Scheme Phase 3. Councillor David.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The flooding in Earby is caused by a range of different mechanisms, if I can use that word. Back in 2015, I will use the word perfect storm. We had a perfect storm that meant that all of those different mechanisms kicked in and caused flooding, and we had approximately 150 properties that were inundated. And both before and after 2015, as a council, we've been working very hard to try and minimise the risk of flooding. And there's a whole range of things being done in terms of marginal gains, where little things added together have reduced the risk of flooding, where we've provided community flood resilience through deployable barriers. So if we have a flooding incident, we can literally roll out barriers that help reduce the risk of flooding to properties. And then there's individual resilience for properties in high risk areas. And on top of that, we have secured European funding and Environment Agency funding, which has worked on two ways, well perhaps three ways, in which flooding occurs in Earby. One of them around Victoria Clough, clearing a blockage, which was a contributory factor in 2015, and previously Victoria Clough has been the culprit with various flooding incidents over the past, the previous 20 years. And then more recently, we've done work on Newcoat, which is the beck that comes from Kelbrook along the valley bottom and comes into Earby literally on a man-made path, the New Cut, that's why it's called New Cut. And we've raised a parapet wall on there, we've put in a barrier alongside the mill, and all of this reduces the flood risk in parts of Earby which otherwise would remain at risk. And certainly Councillor Tom Whip and myself have been there in the middle of the night on many occasions, watching the water levels and helping to deploy barriers and protect people's properties. This issue is about a further phase of flood alleviation work, which is from Wentcliffe Beck. And Wentcliffe Beck is probably the watercourse that gives the greatest risk of flooding, and it's from what they call a rapid response catchment, where water comes down on the hillside, goes into the beck, gets down into the town, and then when there's too much water, the water comes out of the beck, goes onto Water Street, aptly named, and floods down the road, runs like a river, and then ponds as a big reservoir in the centre of Earby. So the other work that we've done, Victoria Clough and New Cut, have reduced the risk of flooding. However, the greatest risk remains from Wentcliffe Beck. Now, after 2015, the Environment Agency commissioned consultants to look at the flood risk in that area, and they came up with a number of options which would reduce the risk. I wouldn't say prevent flooding, but would reduce the risk of flooding. And one of those options was to create upstream storage on Wentcliffe Beck, and that does indeed, if it happens, reduce the risk of flooding. However, the Environment Agency scheme was estimated to cost, well, it was a multi-million-pound project at the very least, and the Environment Agency did not regard it as giving value for money. In other words, the cost of the upstream storage would have outweighed the benefit of the reduced risk of flooding to people's properties. Our engineers here at Pendle looked at the possibilities of creating upstream storage and came up with an alternative upstream storage area which would be less costly to implement, but achieve the same reduction of flood risk as the much more expensive Environment Agency scheme. And the report that we've got in front of us tonight spells out how we can take that forward. The Environment Agency, through the Frequently Flooded Communities programme, have given us £200,000 which we can invest in doing a feasibility study and the work preparatory to actually drawing up and designing the scheme. And we are advised that we can get £2.5 million from the grant in aid that's available through the Environment Agency to do this work. As a prerequisite, if we're going to create an upstream storage area, which is in effect temporary reservoir, we need to put in place the resources to allow the inspection and maintenance of that asset, which would be vested in Pendle Council, despite the Environment Agency saying they were, you know, it was their idea in the first place. They would expect Pendle Council to look after any such reservoir in the future. The report spells out that the annual cost would be at least £3,000 for a supervising engineer, and then every 10 years there would be a full inspection which would cost in the order of £10,000. So, Mr. Chairman, the report asks that we recommend approval to the Council of undertaking that commitment. In other words, we're accepting liability for the project in the future, and we also need to recommend that the full Council use that £200,000 for the necessary flood modelling, scheme design and business case development, and subject to the scheme being feasible, the Council adopt the new asset and be responsible for all future revenue costs associated with inspections and maintenance. So, Mr. Chairman, can I move that we do so? This is vital in order to extend the flood alleviation in Earby, reduce the risk of flooding to another part of Earby that wouldn't benefit from the work that's been carried out to date, and make a significant reduction in the misery inflicted on people not every year, perhaps not even every 10 years, but all too regularly if you look at the historic record of flooding. So I move.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll happily second that proposal. All those in favour?
Just before we take the vote, I just have a couple of questions, Chairman.
Sure.
Just for
Councillor.
clarity purposes. The report mentions how, at the moment, the all reservoir panel engineer cost of that is an unknown. Do we have a bracket that we are going to expect this to cost us within for the all reservoir panel engineer rather?
Sorry, you're looking on paragraph 11.
11, yeah.
To oversee the design. Well, I think initially that's part of the initial 200,000 allocation. Okay. So we'll use the initial 200,000 to do the modelling and to appoint the necessary design engineers, and then if council approves that, then we'll have a better idea of whether or not it's a, you know, the full schemes of forward.
It just wasn't clear in the report. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chairman, just to add, the cost of that design engineer would be set by tender.
Okay.
So the Environment Agency have identified 3 consulting engineers that we could go to for prices. As yet, we don't have the authority to go to that stage.
Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a similar question, but Zafar asked Councillor Ali rather. I just wondered, at what point does the council have to commit to this? You've got the £200,000 grant there, which they're willing to release. At what point during the stage do you go full in and say we are going to take control of the asset and have full ownership over it?
I think Councillor.
Well, Chairman, we need to commit to that now, subject to there being a feasible scheme. It's a prerequisite, and I think I use that word, of the Environment Agency that, you know, we say, right, if this work takes place and we create this upstream storage area, Pendle Council will look after it in the future. So it's not a case of, oh well, we leave that until after the end, because if we don't say so at this point, the Environment Agency turn around and say, well, you can't have your £2.5 million.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I think you have to carry out these works that the Environmental Agency are asking for. Without that, they will not release the 2.5 million that they promised us. Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's great that obviously the grant to look at the feasibility, the scoping of designs for this. My only concern is the ongoing future costs. If it's about servicing it, and it's a cost of £3,000, I think that's fine, that makes sense. But if something was to happen and there was a liability in the future, that it could cost this council a lot of money if they have to commit at this point to doing that without any further knowledge. It's just a massive financial risk from that point of view, and I don't know, you know, to what extent that's been explored, but I can't see in the paper actually.
Councillor Wick.
Well, I'm disappointed, Chairman, with the response from the Conservative councillors there. You talk about there's a massive financial risk. More about the massive financial cost when Eby is flooded. And we've got 150 properties with damages costing £50,000 or £100,000. You're shrugging your shoulders at that, but you know, that is the reality, and there is a direct cost to this council because inevitably we get involved with the clean-up and the response and the assistance that we give to individual businesses and residents. So, you know, it's like saying, well, oh, you know, we shouldn't take the cost on. the cost of £3,000 a year and 10 grand every decade is insignificant in terms of the cost of dealing with flooding itself. And I don't think Councillor Sutcliffe is necessarily waded through floodwaters on an all too frequent basis and gone into people's houses when there's been floodwater, 3 foot up the walls. So, I just don't understand this reticence to be able to act, for this council to get hold of this project and hopefully implement it, although it may not be feasible, but hopefully implement it and make the people on Water Street and in the centre of Earby that bit more secure in the knowledge that the risk of flooding has gone down. So I'm sorry, I don't accept your rather penny pinching approach.
Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, I think the residents in that part of Pendle have suffered over the decades really from flooding. And yes, I accept we do have some sort of duty to try and mitigate the risk to the residents. But I think, on the same hand, I think the questions asked by Councillor Sutcliffe are legitimate questions, because what the question was looking at was not necessarily disagreeing with the scheme itself and the point about the residents are trying to do what we can to protect the residents, but just in terms of the future liability for this council. And I think the question was aimed at that, rather than saying we don't want the scheme at all or we against the scheme. I don't think that was the point of the question. I think it was about what the implications are if this was to be implemented going forward in the future. And I think that's a fair question.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to clarify what I'd said earlier, because I did make the point. It was about the management costs that I was absolutely fine with, £3,000 and £10,000 every 10 years. No problem whatsoever. Those costs are perfectly agreeable. Taking on a huge liability of an asset of this size, there are huge liabilities that could occur in the future, that could land this council with substantial bills in 20 and 30 years down the line. And if that's an asset owned by this council, that's something we've got to be aware of.
Councillor Hanif.
Chair, can we make progress and have a vote on it, please? We just repeating things. Yeah.
Any more speakers? No? Okay. All those in favour? So, item 7 is matters arising from area committees. So the first one is 20 Scotland Road, Nelson.
Over, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you. Entities living with you do no doubt do some good work in Pendle in terms of the issues we have. I'm just concerned about the number of properties which are just being disposed of. I know he's saying they will be sold at market value and at its current value. In terms of negotiations, the director of players will be authorised, if this resolution carries, to negotiate the terms of the sale. Whilst I've got nothing against building bridges and they do good work, I'm just concerned about the property which we're disposing of in Nelson. And I think it's something which I think we need to be careful of.
Thank you. Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you, Chairman. I have no objection to the disposal of this asset, actually. But I think that under item 2, there needs to be a change to the word Nelson, because it says that the property will be occupied by a charity and delivering service for the benefit of the community, Nelson only, and I think that it should be Pendle only. because then it widens the scope of the available tenants. So if it's building bridges that offer services to the whole of Pendle, then surely that would include them occupying the property. So that word Nelson should be changed to Pendle.
So where are you looking? Number?
It's
2.
number 2.
Chairman, I don't think that is included in the proposal that's been put forward. It's for the benefit of the community.
That's fine.
And I think the key thing is that it's going to be used for, it's a charity that's going to be buying it from the council, and they have to operate as a charity, and I think that's the covenant, yeah, to my understanding. So, Councillor Arler.
Yeah, Chairman, usually there's a term on these type of transactions which restricts the changing of hands of this property for the next 10 years, otherwise, other than for community purposes. I'm sure I've read that term somewhere on other transactions that this council has engaged in. Is that something that we're minded to follow again?
I think it's 20 years in this one.
Through yourself, Chair. I'm not sure about the term, Chair, but under recommendation 1, Councillor, it does make reference to any future sale being at market value, and then a covenant restricting to occupation by a charity delivered for the benefit of the community. So yes, it will be restricted to charitable use going forward.
More or less the same. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All those in favour? It's carried. 7B is land at Elizabeth Street, Nelson.
Move that again, Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Any speakers? All those in favour? That's carried. Okay. Land at Waverley Way, Colwyn. Actually, this has been referred from.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether this is the right place to place this obstacle, considering that we had a debate at the full council about the possibility of these Compton's Kitchen line opening, and this is going to be right in the middle of that corridor that was left for this reason. So I don't think I'd be supporting it.
Okay, yeah, and I'll second that. Yeah, I think obviously further information over the last couple of days. This is part of our ambition to have a Compton Skipton rail line. This is the route that we will be taking, so we can't afford to progress with any other project or initiative that will hinder these plans. So I'll happily second that. Councillor David.
Yes, Chairman, just to agree further, it is on the, I think it's the protected transport corridor is the technical term. So there's no way should be agreed to this.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted with members' comments thus far, and Dorothy's proposed. I think that you turned it down. It is in the wrong place. We have an attractive corridor coming to call along the bypass there, and the last thing it needs is a 60 or by 3-yard neon screen. It would be a blight on the area. It's inappropriate for the area, and as members commented, potential use is more important than advertising. So the comments are appreciated.
Can I just add to that? Also, the ones that we have, the small ones that we have in town, they're either not working, or they're covered in graffiti, or both. And I would see this as something that would be targeted as well.
So, yeah, so although basically we're proposing not to proceed with the selling or giving for the digital advertising company, so all those in favour? Thank you. Okay, thank you. The next item is the forward plan. I think this is being published tomorrow, so we don't have that at this stage. Item 9 is the exclusion of public and press.
I move that.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Well, Chairman, I'm going to argue strongly against exclusion of press and public. The item that we're due to discuss is the leisure review, which has been looking at the sports centres in Pendle, in Nelson, Colne and Barnoldswick. And this is one of the most important issues that as a council we've got to discuss. The issue is very important to local residents, local communities, and it's absolutely crucial that we do what we said we were going to do, which was to have a full, informed discussion about the future of the centres, and the only way to do that is to discuss it in public. And I see no justification whatsoever, and my group sees no justification whatsoever in excluding the press and public from talking about the leisure review. We need to engage with people, and we need to allow people to make the comments. And if we're going to have any sensible discussion, for instance, with town and parish councils, you know, this needs to be out in the open. You know, it's been kept secret in the previous administration, and I don't think this administration should continue to follow in their footsteps.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah. So, did you move that? Yeah. So we've got a second.
No, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I need a second.
Can I ask a question first?
Yeah, sure.
I'm surprised, actually I was quite surprised to see this in the exempt items. May I ask officers why this was put into the exempt, exempt, because it is a public consultation and we should be discussing it. So I was just surprised, so I'm asking why this was put in there.
Okay.
Chairman, it's a matter for the committee whether they want to exclude the public or press. It is justifiable to exclude the public and press, but it's a matter for the committee. It's justifiable on the basis of the exemption that's cited in the papers. But it's a matter for the committee's discretion.
That's fine, Howard. Thank you.
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. I think the rationale and thinking in terms of making this an exempt item was that there is commercially sensitive information with regard to financial performance and so on and so forth, which, you know, in my view, and I think the Monetary Office supported the view, would normally be commercially sensitive, which could be advantage to another kind of commercial organisation. That was the rationale put forward, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. Do you have a seconder, Councillor?
Yeah, Chair, personally, as a good feeling, I think we should talk openly about it. I think it makes sense because I don't think this is a key decision. You know, we were talking before about EAB, and we're talking along these decisions which have been neglected for many, many years and are going to have a major impact in the next 20, 30 years. Need to be discussed, and okay, if we are going to discuss sensitive information, I expect people like Philip and Howard to say, hold on, will you not discuss this here? That's fine, and I think that's reasonable, but I think quite a bit we can discuss generally, and so I would suggest that we do talk openly here.
Thank you. Please, Councillor Church.
Chairman, just in support of that, at the ONS committee that looked at this, we were told, as you've heard, that there is commercially sensitive information in there. But on the other hand, you've seen the size of the documents, the amount of information that there is there, which is nothing to do, well, no direct point towards any commercially sensitive information. And I think, as the councillors have said, this is far too big, far too wide-ranging for it to be done in any way confidentially from here on.
Thank you. Okay, so
Give whips. Yeah, yeah.
Seconding it.
Yeah.
So all those in favour?
Sorry,
If
there's only one thing on the table which...
No, we've seconded it. So.
You moved it, didn't you? Amendment.
Well, I mean, we can, you know, it could be withdrawn and we just don't have a vote on it.
That's right. Fine. Okay. That's fine. Thank you. Okay, so the item we're looking at is item 10, strategic leisure review. So this is quite a detailed report. We've had a number of studies over the last couple of years. This came to us earlier this year, considering the running costs of leisure services, and as a shared administration, we give the commitment that we will keep all three leisure centres, Nelson, Colne and Barnolds and Cornwall. So we wanted to make these sustainable and viable for the future. So we did another study. We also asked for all the scrutiny committee to go away and evidence-based report back to executive committee, which they have. It took a bit of time, but they have done a good job there. To be honest with you, there is lots of information within these reports. There's lots to digest, there's lots to absorb, lots to analyse in many ways, lots of figures flying around, and I think that's the reason probably Philip mentioned about commercially sensitive information, but it is crucial that we talk this in public in general. I think the key thing is we just need probably more information. We need to explore all the different avenues, all the different possible funding options for the capital, because over the last couple of years that funding has not happened. That the bids into the capital programs that have happened in other parts of the country, I think we've been slow, if you will, or not as proactive, if you will. So yeah, I think we do need more information. We did probably need to consult some other, probably the likes of the town councils and parish councils. So Councillor Wick.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I agree. The report, the work that's been done is good, and it goes into a lot of detail about the facilities, the cost of facilities, the cost of doing them all, and looking at it in one from one perspective, it's a good news story, because the previous study had a price tag of £50 million, and that was for 2 facilities. This study has got a price tag of £30 million to retain 3 facilities. Now, my tongue was slightly in my cheek there, because we haven't got £50 million and we haven't got £30 million. So although it's a sort of like wow, £20 million off, it's like we haven't got the money. So if we are intent on actually having those accessible facilities in all 3 townships, then we do need to find a way of raising the finance to allow that to happen. And although there is lots of detail in here and options of how facilities could be changed to make them more economically and environmentally sustainable, there isn't a lot of talk about how we resource getting into that position. and the only reference to funding is the 1.7 million that is available for Pendle wavelengths as part of the Nelson Town deal. Now, beyond that, this report assumes that any funding has to come from prudential borrowing, and as Mr Gibson will tell us, there is very little headroom in the Council Capital Programme. We are borrowed up to the maximum that the mortgage will allow. In the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be paying off approximately £3 million of debts that we've had for a number of years, which will give us a little bit of headroom, but that is the only headroom we've got within the prudential borrowing limits, and that doesn't go anywhere towards investing 25 to 30 million pounds in leisure facilities. We had a council meeting last week, and we talked about levelling up funding. We talked about public sector decarbonisation, and I think one of the figures that I referred to was that Calderdale got £12.2 million from levelling up for swimming pools. So there's an example there of where a neighbouring authority has managed to get over £12 million towards their leisure provision. And as we mentioned last week, the round 2 and round 3 levelling up funds that were agreed averaged 19 million and 20 million pounds. So if there is any prospect of getting further funding from that direction, then perhaps there's 19, 20 million pounds or something of that order that could be applied to this sort of scheme. Now, if we get a grant of 19 or 20 million pounds, that isn't adding to the borrowing of this authority. That is external funding that would allow us to do quite a considerable amount of work. Also at last week's meeting, we talked about the public sector decarbonisation, and just shy of £5 million was gained by South Ribble towards decarbonising their leisure centres and making them more environmentally and economically sustainable. So, you know, other authorities have managed to get significant amount of funding which have allowed them to make the necessary investment. Another example in Lancashire is Lancaster, where they made significant investment as well. None of that is referenced in these reports, none of it, and it doesn't even reference the £1 million that is available for us to bid for right now, which is from the Swimming Pool Support Fund. From the revenue funding from Swimming Pool Support Fund, we got £351,009, and unfortunately that didn't include Colne, but it did include Nelson and West Craven, and that has helped backfill the funding that we had put in as authority for the extraordinary energy costs. So that's another opportunity, but no, there's no acknowledgement that there may be public sector decarbonisation funding towards work that needs to be carried out. Sorry, there's no reference to the swimming pool support funding that needs to be carried out. So those are just 3 examples, and it may be that there are other opportunities that we're perhaps not aware of, or it may be there's a change of government and there are opportunities that become available. You never know, we might have a liberally run country in the future. So let's see what those opportunities are before we make decisions on the flawed logic of, well, we'd have to borrow all this money. There's no way we could borrow all that money. There's no way that we could raise that funding, and the Section 151 officer would be refusing to put the name to a document that required us to borrow beyond our means. So I think that's one whole issue that needs a good court of looking over. The other aspect of this, Mr. Chairman, is to do with the resolution of the council that asks that there be consultation with town and parish councils and with residents and users. Now, that as part of the work that was done by the consultants, some town and parish councils were interviewed, might have been 1 or 2 individuals, but they haven't been consulted in the sense of a proper dialogue at member level to see whether there is any prospect of support towards operating the facilities. And insofar as users and residents are concerned, we did have 450 responses, but more on a wish list of, well, what would you like to see, rather than, look, these facilities are costing far more than we can afford, and we need to make them financially and environmentally sustainable. How will we, what's your view about how we can do that? So I think there's 2 important strands of work that we need to properly understand before we start making decisions about, well, we'll do X, Y, Z. And I think those are the possibility of external funding from whatever source there may be, and the proper consultation. Now that it's seen the light of day with the parish and town councils, with residents and with users, setting out the whole of the facts and the figures, and getting people to respond appropriately to the problem that we have, rather than just a wish list of what people might like to see. This needs to be rooted in reality, and it needs to be done properly, so that when the council does take decisions, it does so on the basis of all the facts, and not just a select sector of the information that's needed.
Thank you, Councillor Brick. Councillor Lee.
Chair, I think the week beginning of the 4th of December, Philip, in his wisdom, emailed me some documents. And I just thought they'd be probably 3, 4, 5 pages long. I think they were 108 pages long. And what's all this? So, I had to really come to the office because my small mobile couldn't see those. And, pardon?
Sorry.
To be honest, is after many, many years, I've had to read so much.
I thought you said tweezers.
In my old jobs, I used to read documents like this, but I haven't done that for at least 10 years, 10, 15 years. And then I actually got hold of the old KKP report. I read that as well. I read the Appendix Ledger, Trust, the one give, and all the financial documents. I even went and attended the ONS just to see what the presentations were. and thank you to the chair who invited me to make comment, but I said no. I was there in opposite. I just wanted to listen to the presentations. And I was quite surprised what they presented and what was said, what I heard over the last 6 months, which was quite interesting. But the key thing in all of this to me, Chair, is what is the best thing for the residents of Pendle. And that's the bottom line, and that's what we need to do. Not play politics with it, not do anything else with it. What can we provide within our means? It's like cost of living in any house, in any home, my home, your home, anybody's homes. We are now looking at everything else. With the gas bills increasing, with everything else increasing. The same thing here, how much do we have in Pendle Council? Where are we going to spend it? And the capital programme, we need to look at that very carefully again, I think, with everything else in light. 50 million, 30 million, I don't think we have 10 million, you know? So I think it's really important what we do, and I don't want to be repeating what the colleagues have said. So a Town of Parish Council totally agree with, but I think there might be other partners we haven't looked at who might be interested in things like this. So maybe there are the people there who say, look, it's an opportunity. We might look, so it's identify and look at other partners who might come and look at these things with us. You know, I think because it gives, we've been talking about the 3 leisure centres. I think we also need to start looking at individually each town, what's the purpose of that centre and how does it fit in and what's the future of that. And have an honest discussion. So 3 Barlick, Cowan and Nelson. We were talking about funding, obviously David mentioned funding there. One of the things in Nelson that's coming up is £20 million, which we got for 10 years for £2 million a year. So I asked Philip, I said, what's it for? He said, the government hasn't advised us yet. So again, we're looking at all the options and saying, what is there any small of a funding for either the whole kitty or each of the centres, Cone, Nelson, and obviously Barlick. So I think, and the other side to that is the Leisure Trust. You know, it's given us 4 options. I mean, one of the options is close it all down, sell everything else. Well, that's not an option, okay? But the other 3 options, we need maybe, you know, like you do with anything else, have a look at those. And you know, we're not making a choice here what we do, but we need information on those. Do we bring it in house? What's the benefits? What's the pros and cons? Do we leave it as it is? Or what's the pros and cons? Do we get something else? So they are there. Okay, so we need information and advice because here we're going to make a decision on the next 20, 30 years. Okay, so it's worthwhile, you know, like 30 years ago, 1981 or 82, and David can obviously, when Pendle Council decided to set up Pendle Leisure, okay, sorry, the Leisure Trust. So they made that decision. Again, you know, after so many years, maybe it's time we need to just reevaluate everything else in the mix. And we're having very open and honest discussion with no views on any side saying what is the way forward. Because one thing is definite, we do need the leisure facilities. So that's a must. Okay? So that's a basic foundation. From then on is how much, where, location, things like this. We can't have one super duper. To me, that's not feasible. Because our borough, unfortunately, isn't like other towns. We have 13 small town and parish councils spread over. You know, Barlick is at the one side, and Reedley is at the other side, and Troden is on the other side. You know, so if you look at Burnley, you look at Aki, you look at Blackburn, things like this, it's a very different setup, a very different mentality of the residents, very different politics, very different everything. So we're actually quite unique in one extent, but that makes it difficult for us to make decisions because we really have to think through what the needs of each resident are. Cone is very different, Barlick, Nelson, whatever. So I think this is an excellent start, and we actually have gone quite a way forward. So there isn't that much work left to be done, but I think there is work to be done before we actually make a decision. I really don't want to rush it because I think this is a strategic a decision which we all need to make. Okay, we will have our own differences within the groups and individual councillors and various things, and that's fine, and that's good for democracy. But I think at the end of the day, you know, this decision is going to cost us an arm and a leg. It's an arm and a leg we don't have. Okay? And Richard keeps telling me there's about 2 or 3 million, that's it. Well, I don't think we can even buy a cup of tea with 2 or 3 million here. So we need to start identifying, you know, where we can. And it's all about the things which David said, and obviously I mentioned, looking at, you know, other funding partners, you know, identify other funding streams, and things like this. But I think if anybody hasn't read them, I can give this to you. It's excellent bedtime reading. Okay, it'd be excellent Christmas gift for me to anyone who wants it. Okay, Richard in particular, since he's leaving on Friday, I'm going to be giving something like this to you. But Chair, on a serious note, I think I know we're discussing it, and I would suggest we give ourselves, you know, after Christmas, maybe we need to reconvene and look at this, discuss this again. We still have time on our hands. Okay, there might be some time limits, and I'm sure officers will tell me that. But I think we shouldn't be making any rash decisions at the moment. Christmas is time we can discuss and look at these things. So I think we need to just get a bit more information, Chair. We've got quite a lot. We need a bit more information, and consulting the town parish councils will take some time, because obviously the 3 big ones we need is Barlick, Cone and Nelson to look at this, the town councils, because they're the most relevant. So we need to obviously identify a route which we have between us and take it from there. And if we need to hold another meeting in the new year in January, well, I'm sure it's up to yourself, Chair, but I think we can do that. That's what I'm suggesting, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gladra.
Thank you, Chairman. The first question that I've got is more of a procedural issue that I just want to question and highlight. It's not complex as such. Members weren't distributed, members outside the exec, that is, weren't distributed the papers for the leisure review. There's 5 members here, 3 of which are on ONS, so we're furnished with the outcome there, but 2 aren't. So I just wondered, is that a mistake, an administrative error, or should all members have been furnished with the legislative report before this meeting?
I think that's already been explained. I think the thinking was that this report, you know, because of the commercial sensitivity, that it wasn't for public.
I understand for the public, but for members of the council, as in other councillors,
yeah.
It's hard to come to a meeting. I'd say 3 of us know about the ONS meeting, 2 don't, 2 are here. So it's not a complaint, it's an open question really, that I'm looking for a response. For future meetings where maybe I don't sit on the committee, shouldn't exempt items and the reports be distributed to all members so that they come to exec furnished with that data? Because I don't know what you've got in front of me. I assume it's correct, and that Philip's noted everything that we discussed, but I don't know that because I've not seen it.
I think that basically this report summarises everything that has been already presented.
My question really is about
the report.
Yeah, no,
that's
members
fair.
rather than the content.
I'm sure we can probably. I've been advised that any exempt items normally don't they don't go out to all members, and that's standard.
It's not an exempt item.
Well, now it is, but it was before. So now, if need be, we can. Whether this probably still public password protected. But just been advised again that if you do want those reports made available, they can be sent out tomorrow.
Chair, may I suggest that that will be done? So obviously we'll protect the passwords, yeah?
We can take through you, Chair, we can take the passwords off. I'd just like to point out the appendices are quite thick, so you might not get it before Christmas, but we can arrange for it to be sent out as soon as.
I've received them, Chair, because I was on the ONS. I think my point is, sorry, Chairman, for this meeting and for future exec meetings, if there's an exempt item, shouldn't all members receive them?
No, no, they don't.
Exec can ask
No, they
questions if they haven't received
that's been
them.
clarified. They don't.
Is that a legal requirement or?
It's constitution.
Okay. It was a question, I wasn't sure of the answer, so that's the answer. So next question then.
Yeah.
If I wanted to come to an exec meeting,
Yes.
could I request the purpose?
Yeah, you can
And
request
I
it.
would have access to them, but they wouldn't the standard be issued.
Yeah, of course.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
correct.
All members are entitled
It was
to.
a question, I don't know the answer, but yeah, if I can in future request them before the meeting, you will provide them.
Of course. Yeah. Like I say, it's available to all members. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Not deleted it. So the outcome of the Ordinary and Scrutiny Committee was I believe, unanimous. It is a term of councillors Heath and I used to get so I don't mean to be bad with names. It was quite clear reading the reports and listening to the feedback from the consultants that there isn't a viable option for 3 facilities within the borough. These are expert opinions, it's not my own, although I do concur with them. One of the comments that I think the latest Aspired, the Aspired report, whilst he could spend £30 million on revamping the 3 facilities, his comment was, but you wouldn't do that. It was very clear that you wouldn't spend the money on the 3 current facilities. The reason for that was you may extend the lifetime of the 3 existing facilities by 5 to 10 years, but compared to spending a similar or increased amount on a new facility that you would get 40 years out of. So it was very, very clear that we shouldn't go down that route, even though he was asked to produce a report to spend, to make the 3 facilities viable. The £50 million that's been cited there, it is correct, and that's what KKP produced. That was based on what's called passive house technology and standards, which is the ultimate level of efficiency, around 99.whatever% efficiency. Again, we heard at ONS, and sadly, the portfolio holder couldn't bother to, or whatever phrase you want to use, attend the full meeting. It was very clear that the passive house standards were astronomically more expensive than good standards or builds that included the passive house principles. So you could easily start taking chunks of money off the £50 million to bring it closer to, 30–35 million pounds for a new facility, which was still energy efficient, but wasn't that passive house standard. You're talking about waste hot water being used to warm swimming pools. The technology that they utilise is crazy at that standard. So I agree that further discussion is needed. It absolutely is. But if members had come to the ONS and listened to the consultants, they were very, very clear that you should not go down the path of spending the 30 to 35 million pounds revamping 3 facilities, because you wouldn't get the life expectancy out of value for money, let's say. So they were very, very clear that they would not recommend that course of action. So whilst I agree with comments, that further discussions are needed, those should be based on the fact that we can't sustain, again, as the experts have said, 3 facilities within the borough.
Thank you. Councillor Church.
Thank you. Just to, Chairman, just to add to what we've been saying about the figures, and to touch also on what Councillor Gunnery said there. We've talked a lot about the expenditure and these astronomical, terrifying amounts. There is also the other aspect of the income. Now, I know it hasn't got as many notes on, but the 30 million includes significant upgrades to all 3 units, which also has within it forecasts of the extra footfall or usage that there would be. Now, that would not only mean increased income, because as we've been told, the units between them at the moment are losing, I think, a little under £500,000, something like that. That would be wiped, well, hopefully wiped out immediately, but also as well as the number of, as well as the amount of tickets, extra tickets that are being bought, it would be a greater service to a greater number of residents, and I suggest that should be considered as part of it as well. I do accept that the overall figure is terrifying, and I'm not arguing against that, but there is this other factor within that, and I suggest that should be considered as well.
Thank you. Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. I think it is just a bit premature to say, you know, the keeping 3 is unviable, because I mean in this report any option's unviable really. Looking at only the borrowing, I'm not going to go into the funding options again that Councillor Whip said, but I really think at this stage we really do need to keep all options on the table. Now, I think one thing that this has missed so far has been, well, they've touched on it, but the reviewing the mix of leisure, recreation and wellbeing services. I think it goes into expanding and maybe modifying some of the existing provision. But I think something missed from the consultation is what people go outside of the borough to do in terms of their leisure. It's not looking at what we don't provide at all, what people go further afield for. From personal experience, a lot of people in Barnoldswick go to Leeds for climbing gyms, which, you know, is a relatively cheap to maintain leisure facility, and as far as I'm aware, commercially viable. So I mean, I'd hope that in the coming months we'll look at that more clearly, and with better consultation we get the opinions of people who don't use the facilities in Pendle at all, but are active and use facilities elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me the administration is in a bit of a bind, because like a bad scientist they've written the conclusion without waiting for the results of the test. And now they've got the results of the test, and the test does not come to that conclusion. The administration talked about making difficult decisions and being open, and yet we've heard a strategy described by Councillor David Whip, which is essentially waiting for a pot of gold to appear at the end of the rainbow. And indeed, talking about decarbonisation grants, we're not going to get decarbonisation grants to keep 3 energy inefficient buildings, leisure centres, open. It's not realistic, and we need to be more realistic. We don't have an option to sit and wait for a long time. Councillor Hanif talked about one of the options from PLT, which was that they would just hand back the keys and close the doors. Now, I don't want to get into anything commercially sensitive, but if we sit around forever not making hard decisions, then that is an option that could come to fruition, because there isn't a lot of money hanging around. We don't have the money as a council. PLT don't necessarily have the money to keep these 3 centres open indefinitely. So I agree it would be lovely. We all want the best leisure facilities that we can have for the residents of Pendle, and we all want a constructive and good open discussion. But it seems to me that what the administration has described tonight is not open, and it's not realistic, and they're not showing any signs of being willing to make difficult decisions on a timely basis.
Thank you. Couple of comments, obviously, on my good friend here, who said I came to the ONS. I left at 8:40. And to be honest, by the time, the reason I left, because I saw the 4 Tory colleagues just pressing one thing, and all the questions were pushed at, saying, and I knew the recommendation was, close it, we'll have 1 centre. And that's the reason I left, because for the last 6 months you've been talking about it. That's the only thing you've spoken about. So it was pointless sitting there.
It wasn't a unanimous decision.
Pardon?
It was a unanimous decision, so
that's
you can't blame
yeah.
You let me finish.
I think it's good manners to listen to each other. You said I'm just responding, so it's no point listening, and you're doing the same thing there again. You know, I'm just, and the other colleague obviously made a comment just now. You were in control for 2 years before we took over. This was an issue then. Why wasn't that decision made then? Okay, the KKP report came in January. It wasn't published until May. Why wasn't the Tory, the group? I didn't want to bring politics in, but you started doing that. That's the thing. You always start introducing politics on a genuine, real issue. So this came out on the 6th or 7th of December. It's only 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. And all this information you've got to digest. I would have made a multi-million pound decision when I was in business. I would never make a multi-million pound decision in 2 weeks. I would get all the facts, and if I'm not sure, I'll get more facts. And to me, that's what a good business person does. And we are sitting here looking at a business strategy for the leisure centres and for Pendle and the council and the residents, all included. So it's so easy to knock somebody. But if I just push it back, I would just say, Chair, no decisions. But in my old conversations, I've never once mentioned the previous administration, because it's okay to do tit for tat. It doesn't take you forward, and we've started doing that already. And if this is what the future is going to be like, then who's going to lose out? The people of Pendle. We think we're going to support coal people, but we're not, because we're opposing it. We're going to support Nelson people? No, we're not, we're opposing it. Barlick the same. This is not the way to go forward. The way to go forward is, these are serious decisions, okay? We might agree on a different route, that's fine, but instead of knocking each other, like we just started doing now, I think that isn't the way forward. And I would ask my colleagues that you got all the documents. A fair question, why weren't you given? You can have, those are fair questions, document given, have a read. Let's look at the way forward. Let's ask the right questions, because it doesn't matter who's in power here. It's all about what the residents will benefit, what they're going to get in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years time. We won't be here, none of us will be here. Maybe David Whip will be, because he's been here 40 years, mate. But on a serious note, to me, that's the future. This is how important this is. It's not about a car park here and a car park there. These are talking about multi-million pound projects, the money we don't have. And how and where do we find whatever that is? We don't have to do it all in one go, Chair. We can do it in phased developments. But those are all decisions this council needs to think through and make. And if it's going to take a couple of months extra, I'm willing to do that, which will benefit everybody and our kids and our grandchildren and the next generation. Because one thing, Chair, which colleague didn't mention, is that we talked about the new facility 40 years. Actually, one of the presentations, which was the one who SL presentation, he said if you refurbish all this, it'll give you a good 25 years. So they extend the life over 25. So what's the difference between 25 years and 30 years? Or 35 years? At the end of the day, one is 30 million, one is 50 million. 50 million is giving you 40 years, 30 million is giving you 25 years. For 20 million years, for extra 20 million pounds, it's only 10 years 10-year difference. So all these things come into play, Chair. So I think it's important that we focus on what the issue is instead of starting playing politics here. This is too big.
Councillor Ahmed.
Totally agree with Councillor Hanif in terms of the discussion around not playing politics. But the reality is, over the previous 2 years, we had, every time this issue was discussed, there was nothing but politics. Continuously, yes, I know, Mr. Chairman, you nodded, but the fact of the matter is, at every opportunity in politics, accusing me, as leader of the council, saying I will shut down the leisure facility. On no occasion have I publicly said I want to close. If other councillors say it, that's up to them what they say. I have never ever said that I wanted to close a leisure facility. All I said was, I repeat what Councillor Tom Wick said, keep all options on the table. That's all I said. Didn't say close them, open them, build a new one, but they were just the options because we didn't have all the facts and figures to make the decision. And it is a tough decision. And I think the problem with the leisure facilities over the years has been, it's been used as a political football. And that's a fact from all political parties. And that's why, I guess, we haven't got anywhere. But in the previous 2 years, we did get the ball rolling in terms of trying to move the agenda forward. And I think we made some real progress. And I don't want to take credit for the report here this evening, but part of the work that's coming forward this evening is because of the work that was done over the previous 2 years. We got the board and we got the discussion started. We began having this debate about the legislature, having these difficult choices that we have to make. And they are difficult choices, I accept. Whoever's running the council. We just want to make a couple of points in terms of what's been discussed at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So I just want some clarification in terms of, I know Councillor McGladrey was there and some other councillors, I wasn't there. So what was the conclusion of, somebody can answer this, what was the conclusion of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
The Overview and Scrutiny recommendation as set up in the report at number 31, it says to note the findings of the review indicate that the retrofitting and renewal of the 3 leisure facilities in Colne, Nelson and West Craven will not be financially viable. Not to, recommendation 2 is not to pursue the 3 centre option and to instead consider other options that are affordable and sustainable. Recommendation 3 is to defer consideration of future operating models until a decision has been reached on the long-term future of the 3 facilities.
So in terms of the recommendation from the Overview Scrutiny, does the administration agree with those recommendations?
I think we made that very clear early on that we need to go back. I think Councillor Rips touched on it. We need to go to and speak to and consult with the town and parish councils. We've got to keep all the options open. So we need that further information, and that information, once that comes back to this executive, this shared administration, we will make that decision.
I've got some further questions and points to go in terms of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, there were other people who spoke and gave their comments. The consultants, in terms of their conclusions. Does the administration agree with the what the consultants have said about the legislation?
Like I said, they're very detailed reports. They have been summarised in the report that we've got in front of us. But at this stage we need more information, so we can't make any decisions tonight on those bases. So yeah, we need more information at this stage.
I understand the Chief Executive of the Leisure Trust also spoke at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. No?
No.
She did? She did? Yes.
Passionate.
Sorry? Passionate. Okay. So can I ask what the views of the Chief Exec, because I think it is important in this whole debate, what her thoughts and views are in terms of the leisure facility we have in town.
Sorry, I wasn't at the Overview and Scrutiny, so couldn't comment on that. But I think you were at the budget working group meeting, so I think she made kind of views quite clear at the budget working group meeting.
I think the Councillor McGladrey, that I find it surprising because the Chief Exec of the Leisure Trust spoke out at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which was set up by the Executive Committee, in order to...
It's part of the new.
That's not true.
It's part of the new system.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to
a
legally.
crucial part of process in terms of trying to come to the right decision. And people weren't even aware that, number one, that she was present and spoke and gave her views on it. And second, we don't know what their views are. And we're trying to have a debate around the 3 leisure facilities in Penn. Have I got that right? I think I have.
No, I think that's not correct. I think
no, that is correct because
that's not correct.
Okay.
But anything else?
Correct, yeah.
Any further comments?
No, but
sorry,
that's not answering that.
Would you clarify something, Councillor Wick?
I want to come in more generally, Chairman, just to make the point that executive members were told that they could not participate in the discussion at overview and scrutiny, with the exception of Councillor Hanif. So we had no opportunity to contribute to the discussion well, we hadn't any possibility of contributing to the discussion, which I would make the point that underlines the inadequacy of the governance arrangements that have been sicked onto us by the previous Conservative administration. But I'll just leave that at that one. But I want to come in more generally.
Chair, just for those, I was advised. I know I was advised that you can go there, but as an executive member, can you just observe, not participate? So I said that's the only reason I said I will not talk or just listen. I just want to listen to the presentations, and I'll go.
Right. Final comment. Go.
No, I was speaking. Just ask some questions. Thank you for Councillor Whip's response. I wasn't suggesting that councillors go there and start debating it, because that was the purpose of it. I think the purpose of the overview scrutiny was like a fact-finding mission, trying to dig into this in a bit more detail. And I wouldn't suggest that council go there and start debating and asking questions, but I think it was more for information purposes, and that was the point I was trying to make. I mean, we're 8-9 months down since May, and here we are 9 months down the line, because I would personally criticise saying we're not making progress, but a lot of the legwork has been done. But 9 months down the line, all we're basically saying is kicking this into long grass yet again, and saying there's going to be yet more discussion, more consultation, let's go and speak to the town and parishes. So in terms of speaking to the town and parish councils, can I ask what the discussions around, what them discussion will be around? Because I guess we might be going and saying, can you give us some money? So can I please ask what then discussion will be about town and parish?
I think, like we said earlier on, all options are on the table. We will discuss all the different operating models that are available that could potentially mean help us with financial costs potentially. I don't know how that conversation will take place, but we do need to consult, and that was one of the resolutions that I think I was in the full council, that we do go and consult with the public and also with the town and parish councils, and that's what we are doing. Councillor McGladry.
Thank you.
Right.
I think a couple of points to make. I think the first one was around Councillor David Whip's comments there. At ONS, one of the first items on the agenda with declarations of interest, which differs to other meetings. You have the normal declarations of interest and then whipping declaration of interest as well. The point of overview and scrutiny is obviously to be independent. So Jay, I believe it was Jay, it may have been one of the committee administrators did send out an email to all members. I remember it clearly saying that members can ask questions before the presentations begin, but once the presentations begin, it's only ONS that can interrogate and question the details of the presentation, and I guess that's linked to the whipping comment during the declaration of interest. It can't be an open forum for all 33 members because it is meant to act independently. So I think that may clarify that point of why the exec and other members can't participate during ONS. The other point that I want to make is I do concur with Nadine that very clearly the exec is kicking the can down the road. I still consider myself a relatively new member, but we have the Max Associates, the KKP, and then Aspired, forget the name of the latest report. Plus we had Alison Good sat at the table with us at ONS last week, and all three reports and Alison concurred that 3 facilities are not viable for numerous reasons. It's very, 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 very clear. And if Richard, or our new colleague, was to write a financial report, I'm sure that we'd have 4 or 5 or 6 even, including Alison's report, saying it's not viable. So appreciating the exec's desire to consult with members of parishes and councils and the public, but I believe you're furnished with more than sufficient information to start making these hard decisions you profess to want to make. I can't understand why, with so many reports and the chief exec of Pendle Leisure Trust, you can't get the ball rolling with what should be the clear direction that we need to move away, surely. All the experts' opinions and the head of the very service in question are saying this isn't viable. What are the other options?
Thank you. Yeah, understand mostly what your Conservative position is on that. I think it's been made very clear.
The 3 reports and the head of Pendle Leisure Trust.
Thank you for that.
Let's not make it a political.
Thank you for
this
that.
was an independent
2
overview and scrutiny decision, Chairman.
Right,
it's
2
unfair to say
speakers.
it's a political decision. It was unanimous.
David, do you want to come in? There are 2 more speakers then.
Thank you, Chair.
Wrap up the debate.
Whilst it's only my 4th day here, I'm heartened to hear councillors talk about financial sustainability, resilience and the actual financial environment Pendle faces. Because over the next 6 to 8 weeks we're going to set a budget for next year in the medium-term financial climate with an eye on the capital programme, as Councillor Whip has pointed out, is maxed out with very little headroom, if any, but we need to clarify that capital programme. We need to deliver a sustainable budget for next year and the medium term. So I'm heartened to hear in this forum and at full council last week that there seems to be a recognition that actually it's a very tough environment we're operating in. So there will be some tough decisions to be made, and there is further information that we can provide and work on that will inform, if you like, the setting of the capital programme and the revenue budget for next year. But we're only looking, Chair, at the next 6 to 8 weeks. We've got a budget working group in the new year, and then we've got to finalise that budget for full council in February, or whatever the time frame is. So we're only talking about weeks away. I don't think it's about kicking anything into the long grass. It's about being more informed, to have a full strategic picture and view, because some tough decisions will need to be made on all different service areas, of which this is a very important one. So I just wanted to have the opportunity to say I'm warming to what I'm hearing, but we need some time now in the new year to really work hard. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Councillor Tom Whip and then David Whip, and then we're going to go.
Thank you, Chair. Just first a comment. I mean, this forum, the executive, I think it's not really a place to be discussing the rules of procedure around executive and ONS. I think there's a couple of questions been thrown about for a long time now, which could be asked of officers in the procedure rules outside the meeting. But in terms of what Councillor McGladdery keeps saying, that 3 centres is not viable, I think this report makes it very clear that the only financially viable option we have now is to mothball all 3 facilities. It doesn't matter if it's 2 or 3, both are out of reach financially, and it's how we get to a point where we can do either of those things. Let's not kid ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor David Whip, I'll speak.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Tom Whip's just made the point that there are no financially viable options before us, because, as just to recap, we don't have £50 million, we don't have £30 million, we don't even have £3 million. And that's one of the reasons why, when I first spoke, I said we need to get to the bottom of what the possibilities of external funding are in terms of the funding streams that we know about, Swimming Pool Support Fund, which we know is a thing now, public sector decarbonisation, where we anticipate there will be a further round in the foreseeable future, possible further round of levelling up fund, and whatever else there might be there, including the 20 million, I'll put it in inverted commas, of new Towndale funding available for Nelson. So we need to understand all of that, because nothing, not one of the options is currently viable. In the short term, we need to look at how we can contain the costs of operating the leisure centres, and we've got one or two ideas about that, but they will come out in the budget. And we do need to have that genuine, open discussion with our partners in town and parish councils, our residents and leisure users, because there hasn't been that. For the whole of the previous administration, the Conservatives were denying that there were any suggestions about any closures. But I wonder if Councillor Neave would pass me that the report that...
Which one?
KKP? The KKP, yep. Yeah, so I'll let you walk across.
Of course. That's my exercise for the day.
Thank you very much. Right. Because Councillor Stone said that we'd written the conclusion before we'd done the homework, and I will point this out once more, because I did so when we considered this at the executive, but the previous administration set the terms for this feasibility study, and I read from the introduction, the council has recognised that it cannot afford to retain and refurbish or / replace all three facilities, and the options presented within the scope of this commission include develop a new flagship leisure centre for the borough, or retain two leisure centres. So again, this is the council, the Conservative administration, setting out what it wants to get to. One or perhaps two. And that's what that previous administration did. Councillor Sutcliffe is shaking his head. There is no denying, well, it's actually written in blue and white, but there's no denying what it says in this report, in the introduction. The council has said we want to get down to one or perhaps two. That was the previous administration. So the previous administration wrote the conclusion before they got the feasibility study carried out. Now, Councillor Neave made the point, the date on the front of this report, January 2023. The administration, the previous administration, sat on this report for 5 months, and it was only when our administration took over that we published that report. And here we are, and Councillor Hanif again has made the point, although members of this executive only got these documents today, at our very first opportunity we have put them into the public domain. You know, we are not seeking to keep things secret, we are not seeking to make decisions behind closed doors, we are wanting to get as full an understanding of what the problems are, so that people can make decisions on the basis of knowledge. But Councillor McGladdery said, and I'm grateful for the honesty, he said there isn't a viable option for 3 facilities in the borough. And then he went on to say that further discussions should be on the basis that we can't afford 3 facilities. And Councillor Stone said we don't have the money to keep 3 facilities. Well, all of that is true. We don't have the money. And that's why we want to see whether we can get some money from some other funding sources. And it's not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We're talking about Calderdale getting 12.2 million. We're talking about South Ribble getting 5 million. And look, that adds up to £17 million, which is over half the funding that we've been told we would need to refurbish the existing facilities and make them more environmentally sustainable and financially sustainable for the future. There's criticism about, oh well, you know, you're wasting money refurbishing existing facilities. But if we look at the environmental cost, then actually retaining bricks and mortar rather than knocking it down and starting afresh is a lot more environmentally sustainable than demolition and building completely new. So there is an environmental benefit in refurbishing rather than starting afresh. Where was it? Councillor McGladdery said you could easily reduce the £50 million cost of a new facility. Well, that goes back to what I said at the beginning, that, you know, we haven't got £50 million, we haven't got £30 million, we barely possibly got £3 million, but there's lots of other things that we need to be investing in as well. So, you know, once it's gone, and it's only a fraction of whatever may possibly be needed. In the meantime, as Damon has pointed out, we need to set that sustainable, balanced budget for the next year and for the future years. And we need to look at the costs of operating the leisure centres and how we can get them within the sustainable bounds. I don't think we're going to get £30 million in the next couple of months. I think we might have an idea of whether we could possibly get meaningful sums of money towards investing in the coming few months, but we're going to have to make decisions in terms of the revenue budget based on what we know now and what we can estimate realistically and reliably for the future. So, Mr. Chairman, I think, you know, at the beginning we did sort of move that we note the options of the leisure facilities study. We note the recommendations from ONS, and that we investigate the financial external finances that might be available to invest in leisure facilities, and that we undertake a comprehensive consultation with town and parish councils, residents and leisure service users across the borough, and that we reconsider this at a future meeting, and God bless all who sail in her.
Thank you very much.
Honestly, I won't make. I'll finish. Promise it won't be a political statement at all.
I thought I'd just sum it up, but go on.
I'm going to finish on a positive note.
But just be brief.
Christmas, and it's Richard's last meeting. We agree with Councillor Wood in terms of what he said, because Councillor Wickens, it is absolutely right that we've never had an open discussion with the public. I totally agree with them there. And I think we need to start having that frank and open discussion with the public, and let's give them the facts and figures, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's Bill. Thank you very much, everyone.
Chair, before you close it,
Can I
just
This is from Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Richard. Sad to see you go. All the very best for the future.
Thank you. If you ever want a cuppa, you know where to come.
If you want to sit in another meeting,
I'll watch you on YouTube.
Happy Christmas, guys. Thank you. They probably say, hey, Raymond, you're doing a bloody well.